Hey everybody, how y'all doing? Welcome to the Blue Chip Podcast by fans for fans. This is your host Cody Potter. How y'all doing today? So we got the owners meeting going on in Arizona this week. Got some interviews from Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, things like that. Just really going to kind of go over some of the Adam Peters thing. I'm going to play some clips and things like that. We'll kind of go in and out on this thing, and we'll get to it from there. Adam Peters is a guy that I really respect, man. He knows what he's doing, man. Coming from the Patriots, coming from the Denver Broncos, both of those teams winning a Super Bowl in his time there. Then San Francisco, of course, when he was more, in a higher role as far as personnel and things like that, and then the decision making factors and everything like that went into it. And then them going to the NFC Championship multiple times under his tutelage there, with him and John Lynch and things like that, and the working relationship that they have. So we're going to get right into this, man. Let's get right into this.
The right people, the right coaches, the right scheme for somebody, and they still don't come to you for whatever reason that is. And sometimes it's a great reason. Sometimes you don't think it's as good of a reason, but you can't count on that. So you really kind of just go down the line and just always keep your options open. I think there was a point there where we made a couple signings and let's just sit back and reassess and see where we're at and let some things come to us. And that's what happened this year. And we were able to get some guys that I didn't think we were going to be able to get, and we're really happy that we got them.
How think that not having as many draft picks this year? Obviously, you have the 7th overall pick, but traded some of those with some deals the last few years. Did that make you more aggressive in free agency, just knowing that you wouldn't have as many shots at it in April?
Yeah, I think it was just more we needed to bring a lot of good players in. So obviously, with fewer picks, you're not going to have we don't have a second, we don't have a fourth for Laramie, which I'm fine with that, but so you do have those holes in the draft, but I think it's just more we just needed to get some good players in here and guys that fit our play style, and I think did a really good job of working together with the coaches to achieve that.
How do you feel the receivers room is now? Is that a place where you still would like to add? Or what's your view of it?
Yeah, I think, really every room is a room we'd still like to add. It's March 30th right now. So, but in terms of that room specifically, obviously we have Terry, and Terry's number one receiver. We brought Traylon back, which I'm really excited about. I think he's got another level to go to. He showed us a lot, and at practice and in the games when he was able to make some plays there. Luke and Jalen, another couple of guys that are, being a year older and we're excited about, and then bringing Diami back and Van. We have a couple of young guys in there too. So I like the room right now, but I think just like everywhere, we have a lot of time to add before we play in September.
How high of a priority was it to get a little bit more athleticism in the middle of the field with the linebacker, with bringing Leo and him working with Lou and company?
Yeah, I think it's really more athleticism everywhere, so not just the middle of the field, but certainly wanted to be faster. And so Leo definitely fits that bill, and really most of the guys we brought in fit that bill in terms of that. So, the whole reason we signed him was just because that clip where he jumped up on the bus, that was it for me. Did you guys see that?
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. No, but it speaks to his athleticism, but he's certainly another guy who we think has another level to him. He's hungry. He really wanted to be with us, and he's versatile, so he can play on the edge of the line of scrimmage. He can play off the ball. He was a really good special teams player. He can drop in coverage. So his athleticism, his versatility, and he's young and he's hungry to prove that he can be a better player than he was at the Chiefs, which he was pretty good.
Yeah, so the biggest thing, man, we're talking about free agency, we're talking about the draft, things like that, man. Like I think everything that they did, clearly, it's very, very honest, and it's very everything that he said he was going to do. It was about getting younger, it was about getting faster. It's also about having the scheme versatility that this defense really, really needs. We all know what Frankie Louvu can be. We saw it in 2024, 2025. We saw a down year, missed tackles, things like that, playing a little bit more out of position and things. I think Leo Chenal gives you another long-term piece that really, really can fill that jack role, that wildcat kind of player. You line up multiple different looks, multiple different positions. Has the versatility to play with his hand in the dirt, but can also rush the passer from the stand-up position. Can also play off-ball linebacker and in your base front. I mean, it's just everything that you want from this team, specifically with the edges and things like that. And then, they brought up the point that we don't have a ton of, draft capital in this draft. But, realistically, when you have a all-pro left tackle or all-pro caliber left tackle, I mean, realistically, last year the tape was what it was with Laramie Tunsil. I mean, I thought it was all-pro level. As far as what I saw from the impact, I mean, every game that he was available to us, which was everything but the last, I think, game and a half of the season. I mean, if you're really bitter about not having a second round pick and fourth round pick, whatever it is, for Laramie Tunsil, it's pretty crazy to me, long term, and that's why he got the contract that he got, the extension, and things like that. I mean, Laramie Tunsil is that guy. But I mean, again, it was about giving yourself the flexibility. It's the first topic that he talked about. The first thing that he really, really keyed on in this interview was him talking about being able to go into the draft, pick the best player available for this team, whether it is offense, whether it is defense. You don't want to go into the draft drafting for need. It doesn't mean you won't draft a player at a position that you do need. And, a lot of consensus boards might have somebody higher. We talked about the difference in philosophies when I talk about mock drafts and when I do mock drafts and things like that. I talk about the difference in philosophy, whether it's, the Philadelphia Eagles. I talk about Howie Roseman. He definitely prioritizes that consensus boards. Jordan Tyson on most consensus boards is going to go very, very high. And realistically, if you just go Jordan Tyson off of the tape, he probably is wide receiver number one for most people. I have him for my own reasons in a different level. I've talked about it. I know what his tape was against Texas Tech, and that was definitely dynamic. But Texas Tech in one game, over the course of playing in the Big 12, Texas Tech is that one defense in the Big 12 to where, if you're playing, against Miami, you're playing against Clemson, who, they got their own studs and they got their own players. They're going to be drafted very highly in this draft. In the ACC, you don't consider the SEC, the ACC to the level of the Big 10 or the SEC, but when you're in those divisions, you're playing against top level defenses, almost every week when you're playing your conference schedule, and we all know how physical the SEC and the Big Ten is, and then the ACC is really starting to implement their themselves in those rights too. SMU is a sneaky level, physical level defense and things like that. That doesn't really get the shine. We don't think about them in the ACC. But they are there, and they perform very, very well, and that's why they handed Miami a loss. I mean, their defense really came up in the biggest moments of the season, and in that matchup, and that's why the SMU was such a wild card in the ACC. Jordan Tyson, for everything you're going to see from him on tape, I mean, there's a reason. And we do talk injuries, but realistically, I mean, the man almost had 2,000 yards receiving in the last 2 years, even with all the injuries and the games missed, which speaks to the type of level and the type of impact that you're getting from this type of player when he is on the field. So again, I mean, there's a lot of resistance to Jordan Tyson with the injuries and things like that. But when you just solely look on tape, I mean, there's a reason why, and that's why these consensus boards, every team has their grades. Every team is going to have their own medicals on these players and things like that. The nagging injuries kind of to me, but I mean, Julio Jones had them, Calvin Johnson had them. I mean, superstars have injuries and they deal with injuries, especially when they get to that second contract and things like that. And that's when it really comes into play. Getting this pick right in the early phases is really all you can worry about. The first contract is the first thing you're trying to worry about, because what good is a prospect if you don't get the A-level production from the player in the first level of the contract? You're not going to get a second contract on this team if you're not giving that A-level production, in the first, 2 or 3 years. And that's just what it is. And that's why you can't, look so far ahead when you're scouting these players. Of course, you want the best player short and long term, and there's a balance to that. The ceilings and things like that we talk about with Arvell Reese and things like that. But, again, man, we're going to get back to Adam Peters and the things that he's saying, but those are the things that I really, really have taken away, and it's things that I've continued to preach upon about what I thought Adam Peters was going to do this offseason. It was very evident, and I think he kept his word. He usually does. He doesn't give anything away as far as his plan and things like that. I mean, I know he gets into it at a point in this interview where he talks about the draft, and, he knows a couple guys that are definitely not going to be available at pick number 7. Didn't get into them. He's not going to get into them. He was never going to specify. I mean, I've said it time and time again. I mean, whether it was David Bailey, whether it's Arvell Reese, whether it's, the consensus about Ruben Bain is all over the place just because of the measurables and things like that. But to me, the tape says that he shouldn't be there, especially at a premium position and things like that. That Ruben Bain is probably the safest player in this draft. But I mean, that doesn't really take away for me. We talk about safe players and maybe not having the elite level upside. I think Ruben Bain does have that upside. But again, back to Adam Peters. I mean, we're going to let him do most of the speaking today.
Good.
When you get into the draft, understanding how fluid the draft is, how much does what you've done in free agency impact what you do, especially early on?
Yeah, I think, one of the things we wanted to do was make it so we don't have to force a pick, right? We don't have to pick for need. We don't have to pick a certain position. So we're in that position now. So it's really just, especially with that pick number 7 is a big pick. And so just finding someone who can really impact our team, impact our team right away and impact our team long term. So whoever that is, and there's a lot of good players in there, but with what we did in free agency, it's not like, okay, we have to go get this because we have a gaping hole here or there. And you guys can debate on, where we need to add and all that, and I understand that. But for where we sit, we don't feel like we need to reach for anything right now.
Is it harder to get a feel for what teams like doing this draft compared to other years? Or do you have a different, at this point in the time, do you have a sense, or is it harder than previous years?
Yeah, that's a great question because I feel that way. Like I have no idea who's going to be there at 7 right now. I mean, there's a couple guys that I know are going to be gone, but then how that goes after that, I don't know. And it changes every week. I think if you look at a mock draft this week, next week, the next week, it's kind of changed. So it'll probably get a little more clear as we get closer to the draft. And obviously, we're still right in the middle of our draft meetings, so the more work you can put in, we still have a lot of touch points with the guys. We have 30 visits coming in, so kind of getting an understanding of the landscape and who these guys are even a little bit more. But yeah, it's a mystery to me right now, and so we just got to be ready for anybody.
Because of that, does that make it harder to maybe have teams move around in that first round?
Yeah, I honestly don't. Without having a ton of quarterbacks, I don't know that there's going to be a lot of moving around or moving back. I wouldn't anticipate it. You don't really see that happening unless it's for a quarterback, because it's pretty costly to do that if you want to move up. But so yeah, I haven't heard much about that in terms of teams moving around.
Given how few running backs have been taken as high as 7, would you have any trepidation about taking one there?
I mean, I wouldn't have any trepidation about taking anyone at 7 that I think can really help our team, that we think can really help our team. But also we got Bill in the 7th round last year, so you can get running backs at a lot of different ways. But certainly, if we think that any running back or any really position, no matter what it is, if it's there's the premium positions, as people would say, and there's positions that are maybe less premium, depending on who you ask. But if that person can impact your team in a certain way, then you would take them, regardless of their position.
You said when you guys took Cade that you knew pretty early on that he was for you. Understanding the team 1 through 6 will determine the board, do you know right now who you would want to take if you were given the choice?
No.
Catching mistakes.
Yeah, so again, man, we're talking about Adam Peters here, man, and I mean, just everything he's saying. I mean, whether it's Jeremiah Love, we've talked about Jeremiah Love at nauseam. I mean, it's best player available. I mean, like he's going to do what is best for this team long term. The coaches, his staff, what everybody thinks is the best move for this team long term. If they really think that they need to address the defense, there's a player worthy of drafting defense, they're going to draft that player. If the offensive player has higher level upside and they think that they can get an impact out of that player quicker, they're going to do that. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's there's a million ways to develop a roster. The draft ultimately dictates what you do to build your team. Everybody can have a plan, but realistically, the crop of players, what is available to you, where you are picking, where you finish, where your draft position is, what level of crop the draft has, because he basically talked about it. I talked about it yesterday in the trade back scenarios and things like that. And what I'd like to always say is nothing is coming out of the building from this team. Clearly, it's not coming out of the building from this team, and that's where I think it's the most important for this team. The biggest thing for me with this draft is we have a ton of talent that we have added in free agency. We have a ton of talent that we've added through multiple things, years, previously the 2 drafts that we've had, previous 2 off seasons that we've had of free agents and things like that. There's still going to be the second and third wave that we're going to do. We talked about Brandon Ayuk and Najim and things like that. Again, ultimately for this team, it is going to be a player that is going to impact early and, throughout. It's not just going to be about trying to get an impact for a player that's going to, impact year one, but that might be the top level of what they're going to offer for this team. There's got to be some development, traits and things like that, and then there's philosophies. Again, year one, year two, offensive line, quarterback, things like that, protecting your quarterback and all that. That was the biggest thing. I mean, getting weapons around Jaden, ideally would be your third year type of focus, especially since you went into this offseason and put the type of money that you put into the edge position, and you have, some assets there that you could actually lock up long term after this year that you got on 1-year deals, because maybe they think that they can, produce in this defense a little bit better. And then if they do produce in this defense a little bit better than what they've had, because they had their career year yesterday, I'm talking about Caleb on Chase on, last year, 7.5 sacks, things like that. Really went off in the playoffs because him and Adafe Owe in their playoff game had 5 sacks between them, and those stats don't register to their season totals. But again, both of those guys in their playoff game had exceptional sacks. But again, we're talking about the Chargers, we're talking about the Patriots. Those are 2 teams that are really going to need to continue to figure out how to protect their quarterback in 2 different parts of their life bill too, because we're talking about the Chargers who they were without Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, so just getting them guys back and healthy and things like that are going to go a long way. Adding Tyler Biadasz this offseason again, but them 2 guys getting the sack totals that they got in the playoffs. Adafe Owe is going to be a longer term piece here. I mean, he's here for 2 years at least at the bare minimum, with guaranteed money and things like that. And then Caleb on Chase on, 1 year, $12 million. I think he's gambling on himself a little bit, because I think he knows that he can, get them sack totals up and get more money next year. And if he does, he excels, he's still going to be a player that's going to be 26 next year, going into next year's offseason, something like that. I think he'll be 26 by the end of the season. That's a guy that you can invest in long term. Again, that will be similar to Leo Chenal, the Chigakonkwo's and things like that. The guys that we are prioritizing that range, and things like that. The draft this year, whether it be Carnell Tate, whether it be Jordan Tyson, I have my reservations about Jordan Tyson because of the injury and things like that. But I do know what the tape is, and I would not be opposed to picking Jordan Tyson, because I do know and I would understand why they picked Jordan Tyson, because when you can get a true blue level guy on tape, that can separate as early and often as that guy can through multiple layers of the route tree, in and out of breaks, early, quick twitches, in and outs, in and out cuts and things like that. Just the way that he sets it up, the way that he makes it look, it is really elite. It's dynamic. Everybody wants to comp guys to elite level prospects and things like that, but his comps and separation ability and cutting ability, it truly is elite. It's the physical nature of the game for me that I kind of usually have a problem with, but I have seen him block. I've seen him be a good run blocker. Arizona State loves to run the ball and things like that. Again, this is just talking about Jordan Tyson and the fluctuation of what you're hearing from him, as far as the injuries and things are concerned. But long term, if you're getting if you were really being truly honest about scouting the tape, there's a few guys in this draft that really showed premier level, true 1A level upside. And if you want to be completely honest with yourself, Jordan Tyson is that guy. I mean, he is the guy that's one of one, as far as if you're thinking truly dynamic. Went up against the best cornerback in college football in every matchup that he played in college football. That's definitely the guy. And then he excelled in those positions and things like that when he was healthy. So again, that translates, like getting your Julio Jones, getting your Justin Jefferson, your Jamar Chase and things like that. I mean, this guy has shown the elite level separation and things like that, and all the markers for me. For me, it's Carnell Tate. I think, for everything that I've said about Carnell Tate being a 1A, 1B guy, that has nothing to do to take away about if he improves certain aspects of his game, which is the catching through contact and things like that. I know he can go up and high point the ball and catch that ball through contact. I'm talking about catching the short underneath crossers, middle of the field where you're getting hit at the end of the play, or catching the ball through contact, and things like that. That's the area of, improvement, where if I see Carnell Tate do that in the league, I mean, this guy, it's no longer 1A, 1B, it's 1A, and he's a true dynamic 1A. Does he have, the elite levels, separation and things like that? I think he does. I think he has those skill sets. He might not have timed whatever everybody wanted to see in the combine, but I tell you what, whatever his time speed is, his play speed is very, very exceptional. He has the time speed to be an elite level wide receiver in this league. So for everything that I've markered about Carnell Tate and things like that, that going forward is just something that I wanted to highlight on Sonny Styles. For everything that he measured and timed and tested and everything like that, and the production that he had from the strong safety position from his first year at Ohio State to his last 2 years at Ohio State playing inside linebacker, and the elite level upside and the things like that, people got to understand there's a reason why linebackers tend to not go in the top 10. It's because of the instant impact of the linebacker position coming from college. We've seen guys that have come out and had year one success, and then they've fallen off because teams knew what they were doing, and then they never elevated their game and adjusted and refined their techniques and things like that. Sometimes it's not even on them. Sometimes it's the front in front of them. If you don't have elite level, space eaters in front of you, we talk about guys going to Tampa Bay playing behind Vita Vea and, the defensive tackles that they got over there. There's a reason why, Levante David had the career that he had. He's always had guys in front of him. They kept him clean and things like that. And that's part of the game with the linebacker position, where it really is dependent on the guys in front of them keeping them clean. So you really want to make, if Sonny Styles is going to be the type of pick that you're looking for and you want him to have an instant impact, we know that he has the measurables and the type of things that you need to have a long-term development to be a true one-of-one linebacker in this league. He is a true blue grade for me, but that also hinders on the availability and the level of play in front of him. Can Javon Kinlaw eat up space? Can Johnny Newton be an attacking guy on third down and things like that, and then open up windows and things like that for rush lanes for Sonny Styles to be impactful in the passing game and the blitzing department. Again, and then Tim Settle bringing in the space eater early down kind of guy that can still get push the pocket and things like that on passing downs. And then we all know what Deron Payne can be. We've seen what Deron Payne can be at his best. Can he eat up the space on the rundowns, keep Sonny Styles clean, or shed the block when the offensive line is basically trying to do a stunt or things like that, and then Deron Payne get the early contact on him to clean things up for when Sonny Styles could be able to get through contact and things like that. But again, for everything that Sonny Styles is, this is a really, really loaded linebacker class. We know what Jacob Rodriguez is. I love Jacob Rodriguez. That would be a great pick, second, third round, wherever he's going to go. He's going to be a steal for some team. And then we've talked about the Bryce Betchers and things like that from Oregon, who I think is an absolute dog, absolute stud. The linebacker from K-State and things like that. I mean, we've talked about linebackers heavily on this show, C.J. Allen and guys like that. I mean, there's a lot of linebackers and a lot of potential at that linebacker position in this draft. So again, sometimes what is the value of round one? Are you going to get a player of Carnell Tate's level in round two? I mean, wide receiver is pretty loaded. We've had that for the last couple of years. So again, is the value of picking Carnell Tate in round one to compare what you could get to 71? Is that going to be the big enough leap for you? Is there a big enough disparity between the talent level between those two picks that Carnell Tate is a bigger priority for you? Or Jordan Tyson, again, I've mentioned him. Is the talent discrepancy so much further from 7 to 71 at the linebacker position compared to the wide receiver position, that those are the two that you want to, key focus on early in the draft? Maybe the center position is where you want to go with pick 71. So realistically, where do you want to go around with pick number 7? That's where Adam Peters is really, really fine tuning and focusing on it. Again, he's not going to tell you his plan, but again, I do believe that there's a lot of things that are going to happen, from pick 4, pick 5, pick 6, that aren't really in, I think you can probably have a good idea with what the Jets are going to do, knowing that Fernando Mendoza is going to go number 1. I think there's probably a good, feel around the league with where the Arizona Cardinals are leaning, with pick number 3, thinking that they have a good idea about where the Jets are going to go. So again, let's get back to Adam Peters, but it's just something that I wanted to get into.
This nature of this draft, I guess. Maybe this is silly, but when you guys go to pro days, you guys have guys in for your visits. Mm-hmm. Is there ever any thought of, we don't want to tip people off about who we want to bring in because nobody really knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think there's definitely strategy to that in terms of how much time or how much work you put into certain guys, but at the same time, you also want to know as much as you can about these guys, have as many touch points as you can. So does that mean you don't do a 30 visit because of that? Because then you're missing an opportunity to spend time with them, and our scouts have done an excellent job starting really in August all the way until now of getting as much information as possible. But as we go through that process, we're still learning about these guys, and we're still asking questions and learning new things. And there's guys that I haven't seen, there's guys that DQ hasn't seen that we'd like to spend some time with. So to me, it's a great question. That outweighs the kind of cloak and dagger element of not bringing guys in. I've done that in the past where we just didn't talk to somebody after the combine when we picked them. But I don't know, how much that's, how much that really matters. Like, does the team at number 5 really care who we like?
Right.
I mean, I hope not. I hope they just pick. Yeah. But I mean, enough to trade up. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing for me. I mean, realistically, man, like, you have pick number 7 in this draft. There is going to be a superstar player that ultimately develops at pick 232. I mean, realistically, this is the NFL draft. If you cannot find a list of guys at pick number 7, then you wouldn't have a job. And this is what Adam Peters is basically saying, man. Like, if you're looking around and you're trying to play shadow games and things like that with your prospect visits and things like that, trying to keep people in the league. Ron Rivera got cute with that. Never even met with Jahan Dotson and things like that. He talked about it multiple times, and again, that was a missed pick. And I love Jahan Dotson, but we never used him properly and things like that. And then the development and things like that were partly on Jahan Dotson, part of his quarterback play. A lot of it, I think, was work ethic behind the scenes. There was, always going to be a size issue with him, translating to the NFL. He was a smaller build guy, but he had the elite level separation measurables. Again, I think there's multiple reasons why Jahan Dotson has not panned out to be the level of prospect that I saw him to be with his catch radius and things like that and his catching through contact. But again, I mean, we miss on guys for a reason. There's reasons, and a lot of it is due to the player, some of his scheme. But again, playing shadow games and things like that, man, like realistically, man, interview every player that you can as many times as you can, get the most out of them, and like, if you're tipping your hat, like in the Giants, if like realistically, what Adam Peters just said, if the Giants are going to take a player to simply spite us, then realistically they have no plan at all in the NFL draft. Like, if you're going to draft Jeremiah Love so he does not come to us, like if we were going to draft Jeremiah Love so he does not go to the Chiefs, like realistically, what are you doing, man? Like, if that's not the best player for your team, you should not be picking him. Like, if they're not going to pick Sonny Styles because they love Sonny Styles, but they do not want us to get Jeremiah Love. I mean, what are we even doing here? If that is how you're drafting, you're going to be out of a job in 3 years. So again, man, like, do your homework. I love that this team has a plan. Adam Peters knows what he's doing. Again, man, like everything he does, the way that he handles the draft, he has drafted players off of my draftable board every year, and I'm very, very big on personality types, certain skill sets that I see, and certain type of attitudes that I see from players that they demonstrate in games that they lose and games that they win. Certain level of ascension and skill sets and techniques and things like that you can tell that they're working really, really hard in their offseason. That just helps me believe that they're going to progress through their NFL career, and they're going to work their asses off in the off season to improve any downfalls that they've had and build off of their their rises and things like that when they do have good seasons. So again, man, that's what Adam Peters is basically saying here, and I love that he really handles the NFL draft like this.
A lot of conversation about some of the guys at the top of this draft are at non-premium positions, including like a running back, and part of the conversation is like the economics of it. Like, if you draft that player, that like it's just not as the price later on, especially, is not as high as some other ones. Therefore, maybe it's not making a good value play from a salary cap perspective. Does that matter to you at all? Or
Yeah.
just the tone?
You consider it, yeah, but I really consider more how much they can impact us, and talking with our coaches, talking with the staff and the other scouts, like, okay, how much can this player impact us, and whether you're saying it's a running back, whether it's a safety, whether it's a linebacker that are non-premium positions, but at the same time, like, I had Fred Warner in San Francisco, and I can't tell you how much that guy impacted our team, and so like there are exceptions to that, and so I think you're kind of, you can overthink it by doing that.
Yeah, so this is going to be the last point that I'm going to bring up about this on this pod, and this is the last thing I'm going to speak to. This is what I always talk about when it comes to the scouting and things like that and everything, man. I appreciate everything that Adam Peters said. That wasn't the end of the interview, but it's the last point that I'm really going to make on this episode, because to me, positional value is completely invisible. Like, 17 total touchdowns from the running back position is the same amount of points that you get from the wide receiver position. 17 total touchdowns, 17 receiving touchdowns, 17 rushing touchdowns, whatever it is. 17 touchdowns is 17 touchdowns. 2,500 yards is 2,500 yards, all purpose, whatever it is. Whatever you were doing to impact the roster. And let's be real, if we talk about devalued positions, we talk about it being devalued. We talk about it because it's a player that's coming in on a higher level contract early if you're picking him high in the draft compared to they haven't produced at their position, compared to getting the value, financially at the wide receiver position. But realistically, there's a much bigger field of wide receivers and their escalators and things like that they go into in their second contract for not even being top 10 level players at their position. I mean, a top 15 wide receiver can make top 10 money, and that's to me, what is the value in that? The value in me is production. So realistically, to me, if you got Jackson Smith and Jigba and he gets 17 touchdowns a season for $42 million moving forward, but you have Jeremiah Love, let's just say, I'm just saying this is all hypothetical, but you got Jeremiah Love or Bijan Robinson. If Bijan Robinson for $25 million, if he resets the running back market, whether it's Jamari Gibbs or whether it's Bijan Robinson, if both of them guys have 17 total touchdowns next year, and they make somewhere around $22 to $25 million when they reset the running back market. If $25 million gets you 17 total touchdowns from the running back position, and then Jackson Smith and Jigba, or Jamar Chase, or whatever the wide receivers that's going to be number one this year, whether it's Puka Nacua, who's going to reset the market again, or whatever he's going to do, he's going to top it and obviously be probably about $43 million a year. If that guy has 17 total touchdowns for $43 million a year or $42 million a year, and you can get them same amount of touchdowns from your running back position, and that allows you to spend more money at the tight end position and get more players out of that, and then have a deeper wide receiver room. How are you getting less impact or less, how is that a devalued position? Just because the position doesn't make the amount of money financially, if the impact is still to the premier level in the NFL, that to me is a more valued position. That is a value position. That is a value. That is how you do economics in this league. So to me, having a more impactful running back is more critical, but there are fewer of them guys again. So that's where it comes in. That's why they do talk about it devalued. That the injury risk is higher with the running back position. So if you give them guarantees or you give that type of contract out, there is a bit higher chance that player gets injured. But we all know football. We know what it is, and we're talking about injuries with Jordan Tyson, wide receiver, Julio. It doesn't matter. There are injuries in the game. It's part of the game. But if you get that guy, he's a one-on-one. That's what he is. Then you obviously got a value. They can talk about devalue, but the position is only devalued because of the financial and the cap implications on it. To me, and there's less guys that can do it, in my opinion. So again, this is the Blue Chip Podcast, man. I wanted to get into this interview because it was really, really fun for me to listen to Adam Peters. I love Adam Peters and his philosophies and his style. The fact that he continues to draft guys that have the type of personality, mental makeup, and things like that. I really, really do believe that by year 5 of this roster, this roster turnover is, in my opinion, the type of attitudes, the players, the skill sets, the diversity of, bringing in younger, focused players. I knew that they needed to get older to kind of bring, transition the type of, younger players have to learn from veterans and things like that, how to take care of their bodies and stay healthy. So those valuable learning traits for the guys that we drafted in 24 and 25 are going to carry over the things that they learned from Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, and things like that. So maybe they didn't have the key impact. Maybe we were giving up a little bit in the speed department and things like that, but the impact that these guys learned off the field are going to carry these guys forward through their second and third contracts and things like that going forward. And that's why they identified these players as commanders moving forward. That's why I believe guys like Mikey Sainristil, Trey Amos, and things like that, there's going to be a lot of development and a lot of improvement for these guys going forward. Just because it was a bad year last year, I think we're on our way to a much better season this year. But again, health, we see what health and things like that really do factor into teams, and it can derail the season quick. But again, thank you guys for checking out the Blue Chip Podcast. I know I'm throwing a lot of content out to you guys. I really do appreciate anybody that's staying tuned and watching the episodes and things like that. I really do appreciate you. So, if you want to be interactive, comment and things like that, and I'll be, very, very active with you guys and responding and things like that, or might even put something that you've asked me onto the pod and things like that and answer you directly through that. So again, thank you guys for checking out the pod. Have a blessed day and stay safe.